Hey everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're back at Jackson's Auto Wreckers, and I got, I think, a pretty good video to make for you. Let's get started. This place is like FE heaven. Ford FE big block I'm talking about. There is FE engines and parts everywhere around this place. And I'm often, when I'm in here, back there wandering around, I get a lot of questions from fellows about FE engines, because most of the guys are looking for 390s, right? Everybody wants a 390. I can't blame them. The 390 is a great engine, man. So what we're going to do in this video, I'm going to try to sort through some of this for you, give you a bit of a junkyard spotter's guide for Ford FE engines, and together we're going to learn how to tell them apart and how to figure out how to get what you're looking for. Here's a block right here. So we're gonna try and find out how we can find something like this and figure out what it is and what it's good for, and you know, maybe we can get some of these things out of here back on the road. FE engines were made from 1958 till about 1978 in all kinds of displacements, and they were used in all kinds of applications, from family cars to muscle cars, race cars, pickup trucks, heavy trucks, stationary equipment, you name it, an FE engine could do it. There's all kinds of different Ford V8 engines, and you can check back with our, I'll put a link in the description box below to my video about the different families of Ford V8 engines. But if you're a kid like me growing up in the 70s and 80s and experiencing the whole, you know, muscle car thing as a kid and a teenager, these FE engines, man, they were what powered Ford through the 60s, right? So a lot of people like them. They're very popular and they look cool, right? Even a 352 has got that 427 lineage or 428 Cobra Jet lineage, you know. And I guess that's why people love them. So if you're putting a project together and you're looking for an FE engine and you don't know where to start to find one, you've come to the right place. We're going to kind of do a junkyard spotter's guide, and this stuff will be good whether you're looking at cars in a junkyard or you find an old, you know, 69 Ford station wagon in some farmyard somewhere and you're trying to figure out what the engine is, right? Let's talk now about changes over the years, so you don't end up with an engine that you can't use, because there's a few differences over the years. First thing that they changed, starting in 1965, they added, the original ones only had these two bosses for motor mounts right here, and these were actually the same as a Y block. In 1958, up until the end of the Y block, at least in 62, the same motor mounts were used to drop either an FE or a Y block into a Ford car. When the engine started going up in power, right, they added these two here, so that most of the mounts I've seen in cars use 3 bolts. They don't use all 4. They use that one, and that one. Oh, this is cool. There's bumblebees. Look at that going in and out of there. Okay, we're not going to disturb them too much. So that's one change that they made. If you've got a car that, like a 65 Up Galaxy or something, that wants 3-bolt motor mounts, and you get one of those old 2-bolt blocks, I don't know if that'll work or not, because I think the stud pulls back here and you'll be putting a lot of stress on those 2 bosses. Probably not a good idea. So here we can see 2 blocks side by side, and I can show you the difference in an early versus a late. So you'll see here, this is an early one. This is a 352. It's probably 63 or 64, I believe. And you can see here, it's only got 2 bolts for the motor mount. Whereas this one here is a 65 up block, and it's got the added 2 bosses here for the 3-bolt motor mounts. So they would use 1, 2, 3, I'm pretty sure, in a Galaxy anyway. Another difference you'll find in the later block, you can see here, right there, that's the hole for the alternator bolt. You can see this early block does not have it. Although it does have the bung there, so you could drill and tap there to install the alternator bolt. I'm not sure if the blocks even earlier than this one even have that bung, but I know where there's one we can have a look at to see. Here's a block that's a little bit earlier again than the one we just looked at, and you can see here it does not have the bung for the alternator bolt, whereas the previous block had the bung, but it wasn't drilled. So what you have to do on this block, if you want to use an alternator, there's a company that makes a little aftermarket bracket that probably picks up from this bolt around the corner and just goes around here and has a captive nut in it to give you a place to attach the alternator to. And just another little thing you need to be aware of. Like I said, mixing and matching parts on these. And there's a nice look at how the generator actually mounts to the block. Another change they made in 1966, so 65, we got the extra bolt holes. 1966, they added positive crankcase ventilation. So up until 1965, right in this corner here, you still had a breather tube. And back here, right around there, there was the draft tube that came out of the intake manifold, and that's how the engine was vented. The third, not really big change, but change that you'll notice if you're trying to put one of these things together, is starting in 1968, they changed the harmonic balancer. So you can see this has got a big wide balancer up on it. Up until 1967, they had a skinny balancer with a pulley cut into it. So if you had just a base model car with just an alternator, no power steering, no air conditioning, no nothing, that's all you had was the single thin dampener with the belt pulley in it, or with the belt groove in it. If you had power steering, whatever, they would start bolting sheet metal pulleys onto it, kind of like this one has. The good news with that is if you're trying to put a 67 engine in a 68 car, and thankfully the balancers all interchange. You can take this complete assembly off and put it on a 1965 engine, and it doesn't care. So we could see this Mercury will have everything. It's a 63 Mercury, so it'll have 2-bolt motor mounts. It's got the breather, the old school breather. And you can see down there, it's got the skinny harmonic balancer with the alternator pulley in it, or in this case, generator pulley. So like I said, that setup was used up to and including 1967, and it's no problem. If you've got a 68 or newer car, you just get a 68 or newer balancer with the pulley you need and stick it right on there, and the car couldn't care less, or the engine couldn't care less. The other change, I guess, another change that was made up until 64, the expansion tank and radiator cap was on the front of the engine here. You'll see that in pictures, a little square tank sitting right here. There was no cap on the radiator until 1965. When the FE engine came out in 1958, it was originally the 332 and the 361 Edsel engine. And then as time went on, more and more of them got added. We got the 352. We got the 390. We got the 406 high performance. There was no such thing as a low performance 406. It was strictly a performance engine. We got the 410 in 1966 and 67, Mercury only. There was the 427 in all its configurations, the 428 and the 428 Cobra Jet, and Super Cobra Jet as time went on. We'll talk about all those things. Except for maybe the 427, because and the 406, really, those are animals all their own. We're just going to talk about what the average guy could find in the average junkyard. So say we find this one here in a junkyard, and we're trying to figure out if it's what we need. First thing we have to determine is what it is. There's a few different ways to find that out. If it's still in the car and it looks like it's the original one, well, you can just check the VIN and see what that car was born with, and leave it at that. Cross 2 fingers, a couple of Hail Marys, and say, okay, that's what it said it is. That's what it is. Unfortunately, with FE engines, externally, they all look the same. And Ford, because they were mixing and matching sand molds all the time. Almost all of them, even up to some 427s, have 352 cast into the block somewhere. So you'll grab a 390 or something, and don't be dissuaded because it has 352 stamped in it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a 352. So what we're going to do is learn how to figure out what they are. And if you're just looking at an engine laying like this in the back of a truck, there's a couple of things you need to do first. Number one, you got to do a little kind of detective work. So we see that this thing has got an EGR valve. It's got thermactor emissions on it, and it's got the later valve covers. So we can be pretty certain that this thing came out of a, and it's got Duraspark. So we can be pretty certain that this came out of a mid-70s pickup truck, because by the time they were putting EGR valves on engines, there were no FE engines in cars anymore. So the other clue that we get is this oil filter sticking out sideways. So now we know that it's from a truck, and it's got the large sump truck oil pan. We'll cover that in a little bit. So what we know now is that if we want a 390, we at least have a 390 block, because the only two choices you have in a pickup truck are a 360 or a 390. They both use the same 4-inch and 50 thou bore. The 390, well, it just uses a 390 crankshaft. And the 360 uses the old 352 car crankshaft. Back in the 352, it was only a 4-inch bore. That's how you get the difference. The extra 50 thousandths of bore makes it from a 352 to a 360. So what we can do here is we can pull a spark plug out, and we could turn the engine over and measure the stroke, and that'll tell us what this thing is. On these Smog engines, the first and easiest thing to do is look at the valve cover, and it'll tell you what it is. See, 360. Or it'll at least tell you what the valve cover was originally on. But that still doesn't mean that's what it is, right? The only way to know for sure is to check the stroke. So we're going to pull a spark plug out of this thing and check the stroke. So we pull the plug out, and I just use a tie wrap here to feel down for the piston, and we get that. So she's about halfway down. I don't know if it's on the way down or the way up. So we'll turn it a bit. What we want to do is get the piston either all the way down or all the way up. So now that it's all the way down, we'll unscientifically take a measurement here. About that much. Let's measure it. So I got about 5.5 inches. So we got to turn the crankshaft 180 degrees and measure it again, and see what the difference is, and that'll be our stroke. You know, ish. Luckily, these things are get out of here. Bees buzzing around my head. They're living down in there. They're starting to get a little aggressive. I maybe have to give them a break for a second. But anyway, as I was saying, it doesn't have to be exact. The strokes of these things are different enough that you can do this with a tape measure. Wow. So in the end, those bees or wasps or whatever they were started getting real aggressive and chased me out of there. But I did manage to get the thing back up to the top, and I measured around 3.5 inches of stroke. So yes, that's a 360. There's nothing wrong with a 360. Like it's got the same bore as the 390. So if you can get your hands on a 390 crankshaft, or just buy a rotating assembly, that's an advantage we have now that you didn't have in the old days. You buy a rotating assembly that's designed to go in the 4-inch and 50 thousandths bore, and you can build whatever you want. There's another way to check them. Another way to check them, so long as it's a 65 or newer engine, is you just look at the back of the crankshaft. And if you see this football cutout, you know it's a 332 or 352, a short stroke crank, because they had to put this football cutout in order to drill this counterweight. That's what they did. You'll see on a 390 crank or anything bigger, right? All it will have is that I think this is probably what they used to drive the crank when they were machining it. all you'll see is this. When you see this and this, you know it's a short stroke crank. Now, apparently there were, up until 64, all cranks got the football cut out. I haven't been able to confirm that yet. I've been picking up crankshafts around here all day, and we're going to see if we can figure out if that's true or not. If I've got the right ones, you know. I'm not 100% sure about that. Now, if you happen to find something like this, this is the FEHD engine, which is, I think, an F700 and larger trucks. It came in 3 displacements, 332, 361, and 391. They made these things from 1964 until the late 70s. What these are good for is they have a great block. These things have super heavy duty blocks. So here's what I wanted to tell you about these. I forgot to when I was in the yard, but luckily I've got this one sitting here in my backyard. When you're looking at the FTHD truck engines, if you find a 361 or a 391, this is what you want to look for on the back of the block. This is up here on the rear bulkhead where it always says 352. And you see that scratch? We call that a C scratch. It's kind of a backward C and an X. The C is the most important one. The C means that this block was cast with a 428 water jacket in it. And you test that like we did it back in the yard with the drill bit test with the 13/64 drill bit. And we did that. You can see there where the frost plug's out. And we did that and found that the 13/64 drill bit gets stuck. So we know this thing's got the big jugs in it. Debate rages about the X. Some say it means it's a high nickel block. Others say nobody knows what it means. But it's the C that's important. C means 428 water jacket. So this is an excellent block because you remember, we've got that 428 crankshaft, right? So we can bore this thing to 4.130 just like a 428 and build ourselves a 428 with a Junkyard block. So that's why I hope that big F700 truck that I was showing you today in Jackson's, somebody really needs to have a look at the back of the block on that thing. Unfortunately, the bell housing is still on it, and on them trucks, that's what holds the back of the engine up. But I'm pretty sure that one, you're probably going to find a C-scratch block in that. There's another FT engine in a box out behind the shop, but there's no scratch mark on that. Now, if it's a 64 or 65, when there was no 428s, I don't know what you would see on those blocks to denote the heavy water jacket. No idea. I don't know anything about that. But I know from 66 up, once the 428 was a thing, you want to look for a C-scratch on those engines. And remember, the 332 won't have it because that one's cast on a 390 water jacket, which is still good. Remember that block we found today. All right, now that we had a look at some of the basic differences to the externals of the engines over the years, and we looked at that one in the truck over there, and we're able to figure out what it is by checking the stroke, we can go ahead and start looking at some parts and seeing some of the differences between the various parts over the various years, because it is an absolute maelstrom. They were just constantly changing and evolving. It's actually fascinating from where these engines started to where they ended up. So I guess the best place to start is with the block, and we'll go from there. If you happen to find one and it's like this one, all in one piece, and it's stuck, so you can't turn it to check the stroke, but at least it's sitting upright like this one is, you can, and I'm not sure this will always work, but sometimes it'll work. Take all the spark plugs out, right? And measure all the pistons, and you'll find the one that's the furthest down and the one that's furthest up. And you can maybe use that information to make an educated guess as to what it is. Sometimes when they don't turn, it's problematic trying to figure out what they are, but like I said, there's ways around it. In the case of this one, because it is a newer one, it's a Thermac or EGR engine like the one we looked at over there. You can look at the back of the crankshaft and look for that football notch. If you see the football notch, you know it's a 360. So first thing we're going to start with is the heart of the engine, the block. We found this one in a van over yonder. It's the only bare FE block I could find up here. There is another one in a truck that we looked at in the opening clip, and down below at the bottom of the hill. Maybe we'll check that one out on the way down and see if we can determine what it is. But for now, this is the one we're going to work on. We're going to try and figure out what this thing is. First thing you'll do on these things is check the rear bulkhead here for any scratch marks. And this has the obligatory 352 that many of them had, regardless of what size they seem to be. Up here you can see also 352. Looking at the bores, I'd say this definitely has the 4-inch bore that was used on the 352. But we still have more detective work to do. So once we stand it up, we can see here, this is a C6ME-A block, which just means this casting was first used in C, the 1966. We can see here, it's got the 4-bolt motor mounts. We also see, interesting, this is a Ford service replacement engine. It's got a Ford of Canada tag on the side of it. What we do see, though, is this little plug on the side. You see that little plug? That's a 3/8 pipe plug. And what that is for is the oil return, or the oil drain, from an air compressor. So that tells us this here is a FT-HD block, not an FE car block. This is a heavy-duty truck engine. So this is an excellent candidate to use in a car, and I'll show you why. Incidentally, we can see here (6L18). So 6 is the year, 1966. L is the month. They don't use I, so L would be 11 rather than I. So November, L is November 1966, the 18th. So this block was cast on the 18th of November 1966, for what it's worth. Now, this is going to take us to the interesting part. Because it's a heavy-duty truck engine, they always cast these on one water jacket bigger than they need it to be, because it's a heavy-duty truck engine. So this thing here, we do the old drill bit test, and if you were looking for a 428 block, right, you get a 13/64 drill and try to stick it between these two water jackets here. If it gets stuck, you know you've got the thickest water jacket, and you've got a block that'll take, well, aside from the 427, you've got the block that'll take the 4.130 428 bore, and that's what the 391 heavy-duty truck engine was cast on, that water jacket. So if you find a 391 heavy-duty truck engine, it'll usually be cast on the thick 427 water jacket. So this 13/64 drill bit would get stuck if you tried to stick it in. Anyway, on this one, what you're looking for is, if you're testing for a 390 water jacket, you need a 7/32 drill bit. Well, unfortunately, I haven't got one. But this guy, the 13/64, it literally just fits in perfect with no room to spare. So, yeah, it's only a 4-inch bore, but it's cast on a water jacket that'll take the 4-inch and 50 thou bore of the 360 or the 390. So this block is an excellent candidate to bore out and make into a 390. This is a good block. The only thing you really have to do to these HD blocks to use them in a car is, you can see right down in there that that little bore where the bottom of the distributor goes, there's a little bushing you have to buy. You used to be able to get them from Ford. I don't know if you can anymore, but there's aftermarket ones around, because the bottom of the HD distributor, this part here that runs in that bore, was a little bit bigger because the HD engine actually uses a larger oil pump shaft. So keep that in mind if you want to use this in a car. That's literally the only thing you have to change. Okay, now let's talk about crankshafts. You can see these ones here all have the football cut out. That one's got it. This one here, the middle one, does not have the little notch. It only has the football cut out. So there's a few ways we can determine what these are. The easiest way is to find the number on it. There is a way you can kind of sort of measure them with a tape measure or a ruler, and it's usually relatively accurate, but let's see if we can find a number. Sometimes on the later ones it'll be up here on one of these counterweights, and sometimes it's cast into the back of them. You just got to get a wire brush. It depends what year they are, right? You just got to get a wire brush and check. So we checked these guys. This one's got an A stamped in it here, which, don't get excited if you look it up. It says it's a 428 crank. That's definitely not a 428 crank. You could tell by the stroke. This one, C4AE-E or -A, pardon me, that's an earlier 352 crankshaft. And this one here has got 2T stamped in it, and that computes to a medium duty 360 or 361 truck engine. All of these you can see by this right here. These are all cast. These are all cast crankshafts. This guy here is a forged crankshaft, C4TE 6303A, and that on our chart here, there it is there, 64 to 78, 330 HD or 361 HD. So that, and you could tell, you can see here, it's an HD crank. Number one, because it's forged, and number two, look at the giant snout on it as compared to the normal crank. It's 1 3/4, and that's 1 3/8. Now here's a couple of crankshafts that are mine. I brought them from home. This one we'll find is stamped 2U, and that is a 390 crankshaft. You'll see that an easy way to tell cranks apart is that you see that distance there, the distance between that right there. I can almost put my finger in between there, and on the shorter stroke cranks, that hole comes down to about here. And now this one here is simply stamped B, and this is this one's also from home. This one is 66 or 67 Mercury 410 or 428 crankshaft. And again, you can see the difference, right? Here, see what I mean on the short stroke crank? On the long stroke crank, I could fit my finger between there and that hole. And this, it's almost right down to the radius there. That's an easy way to tell what crank you're dealing with when it's lying on the ground. Now, an interesting fact, I don't think in this day and age it's worth it because of the aftermarket rotating assemblies you can buy. But back when, the 391 forged crank would be a great piece to use for racing or real high performance use. You would have to have the snout turned down, and the back end of it needs to be modified a little bit. You can see here the flywheel bolt pattern is the same. It's just you have to reduce the height of this, and you probably want to lighten it up some, right? But that would be the alternative to back in the day, at least, to the aftermarket crankshafts we have available now. Also note that the HD truck engine is externally balanced and uses, this is the flywheel from it. It's got a little imbalance on it there. Next, we're going to be talking about pistons and rods. And there's two basic connecting rods that we're using in these things. aside from stuff like 428 Super Cobra jets and 427s, we're not getting into that. We're just dealing with stuff you're going to find in the junkyard, right? So there's two basic connecting rods you'll see. And once you see the difference in them, you'll never forget it. There, can you see that? That's a 390 and up connecting rod. That's a 360 and down connecting rod. It's pretty evident that the difference in them. You look up in there and that's still got the kind of lollipop shape at the top. Whereas that one is definitely less pronounced of a lollipop shape. And the width at the bottom is tremendously different. So these are pistons from an HD. These are 332 pistons. And what you can see here is that they've got 3 compression rings as opposed to 2 compression rings on the car and pickup truck piston. That's interesting. That's what makes them different. But you can see they use just the same old 390 connecting rods. So if you have one of these engines and you're going to, like that block we got over there, you could reuse the rods out of it. If you could find a 390 crankshaft, and you need a set of pistons, right? I don't think these would be very good for a performance type build. Look how much they're a lot more skirted. Also, that's to make them last, right? Anyway, that's what you'll find in the HD engine. Now, as far as the car stuff goes, on the heavy connecting rods, these are actually shorter, these rods, because they go with longer strokes, right? The three, we'll just call them 352 rods for sake of argument, and these 390 rods. The 352 rods are a touch longer because they work with a shorter stroke. So these guys, what you'll find is with these, they're all marked as to what they are. For instance, this one is punched or marked 410. So this, the original use for this piston would be a 410 Mercury engine, but they later used these pistons in 390 pickup truck engines because it's got a different pin height than a normal 390 piston, and sits the top of the piston further down in the bore for a lower compression ratio. This one here is marked 390 2-barrel. So that'd be your 390 2-barrel piston. The 394 barrel piston is I'll show you what's different. See the dish on this 2-barrel piston? The 394 barrel piston, I can't really see it on that one. It's got a dish more like a 410 piston, but I haven't got a clean one here to show you. It's kind of more like that on this 360 piston. This one here on the short rod, or pardon me, on the light rod, the 352 rod, that one's marked 360. So that came out of a 360 truck engine. And if we went and cleaned all of those ones that I've got there, you'll find some of them are 360 and some of them will be marked 352. There are some guys that do mixing and matching of pistons and connecting rods to get custom compression ratios and stuff like that. Working with stroker cranks, there's a lot you can do. Just bear in mind that if you do any of that stuff, you're going to have to send your engine out to be balanced. Cylinder heads. Here we go. There's a million variables. There are so many different heads for these things. But I kind of found you the 3 main examples that you'll run across. This one here is an HD. This is a truck. This is an FT HD head. The 332, the 361, and the 391 will all have this head. It's completely different than the FE head in that it's got this heat passage here, necessitating these extra 2 bolts. You'll see there's no heat passage on the FE head. This here, for comparison, that's an FE manifold. See, it doesn't have the 2 extra bolts in the middle. So these heads for a car or pickup truck build, pretty much useless. But I just wanted to show it to you, so if you see it lying around, you know to avoid it. They've also, I think, got small valves. Yeah, they've got small valves. Okay, 4-cylinder heads, if you're looking for heads, you're going to need a chart. You can download a chart with all the casting numbers on. See, I got this off the FE engine forum. And it's upside down, but you can see there. It's got all your casting numbers. So when you find a set of heads, you can identify them. So the first ones we're going to look at are, I call them the originals, right? And how you identify these is they've just got this single little rib across here. It's like a strengthening web between the cylinder head proper and the exhaust port flange, right? These things were used up until 1965 or 66. These actual ones are C4AEG. And if we look them up, we'll see here C4, where are they? Where are they? There they are there, C4AEG, 352 heads with 202 intake and 155 exhaust. And I checked, that is correct. A little later on, the next batch of heads are these ones. This one here is C6TE. Okay, my bad. These ones are C6TEG. So these heads originally showed up in 1966, and I'll show you the big difference between these heads and these ones. First, you see these places here, 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 and here, where they've got extra meat for seemingly no reason. That is so that these heads could be drilled and tapped for the 14-bolt exhaust manifolds that were used on unit body cars when they started putting FE engines in unit body cars. Starting with Fairlanes in 1966, I guess Comets too, and then spreading to Mustangs and Cougars in 67. These are also the first ones. You'll notice this one's just got a rib here, and that one's got that little pad here. This is the beginnings of Thermactor, which is the exhaust air injector system. So you'll notice the exhaust port, it's got this little, see that line? You can see it better in that one, that little lump. And that was the extra meat they cast into it, so the Thermactor air injector could come through. You see, these heads don't have that. It's not really a big deal. You just get in there with a burr and you clean that crap all out and you make it nice and smooth like this head is. That's all you really have to do to get rid of that. And you can see here the chambers are pretty much identical. The valve sizes are the same. They were just making tiny little tweaks, changes here and there along the line. There would be new heads for 67, C7 heads, new heads for 68, the C8 heads. And I think the C8 heads went right until 71, C8AEH. I've got piles of those at home. And here's the last one, Mr. Ugly. Thermactor heads, air injection heads. So these things, you can see they've got the lump for the air injector, but these actually have the air injectors in them. So you can see here, look at that. That pipe goes down and it shoots right on the back side of the exhaust valve. It shoots compressed air at it. So that extra little burst of oxygen, any unburnt fuel coming out when the exhaust valve is open is theoretically burned in the exhaust port by that. So, port-wise, it's not really any different than that head, with the exception that that's not drilled. So this, if you take these Thermactor pipes out of here, now you've got to go around and plug all these holes. Let's check the chamber on these. These are D2TE. These are like the last, I believe, the last FE casting heads that they ever came up with. I don't think there's anything later. Let me check my chart. Yeah, so that's it, D2TE. These are the last FE heads. Now, the one good thing about D2s, if you find some that were cast kind of mid-1973 or later, you'll find them with hard exhaust seats, so you don't have to worry about that. This head, we can tell by the date code here, 1975, April 17th. So at least it's got hardened exhaust seats. It's got that one small thing going for it. Another thing with the D2 head, look at the port. The intake ports compared to these old ones, vastly different. You can see here, they were going for velocity rather than volume. That one's 1 7/8 tall, and this one is 2 1/4 tall. Although a lot of the bottom of it is blocked, right? It's got to go up over this hill where it's just a straight shot in with that. So I'm not really sure how much of a difference that makes, if any. Ultra high performance, probably it makes a difference. A guy like me running around on the street probably would never even notice it. But anyway, that's kind of the basic rundown of cylinder heads. There are, like you get into Cobra Jet heads, they've got bigger intake valves. Or maybe, bigger exhaust valves, I think, the Cobra Jet. Let's see here. We have the chart. Yeah, this chart at least shows a couple of different options for Cobra Jet. You see here, C8AEF, 202 and 155, like the rest of them. And then Cobra Jet with Thermactor, 209 and 165. 428 Cobra Jet. Like they're showing that 73 to 76. So I don't think there was any 428 Cobra Jets between 1973 and 76. I'm not really sure I'm buying that. Some of the stuff on this chart is a little suspect. In a Galaxy, these are the crappy exhaust manifolds we're forced to deal with. Pickup trucks use the same style, although the outlets may be in a little different orientation. And later, they came up with a really nice finned one for this side, but they didn't really do much for the one on the other side, if I recall. Later on, they did, I think for 1968, maybe 67, they increased the flange opening size. That was about all they ever did with them. Unfortunately, the cast iron headers, or whatever you want to call them, that they used on the 406 and 427 cars, the old leaf spring cars up till 1964, just will not fit around the steering box and stuff on the coil spring 65 and up cars. So there are a couple of options. We can go with Sanderson shorty headers. I've got a set I'm going to try on my 68 Galaxy. Long tube headers are also an option, but hellish expensive. And I guess there would be some kind of trick cast iron 1965 427 Galaxy exhaust manifolds, but I don't know if they'll bolt onto normal FE heads, and I don't know if they will clear power steering. If you know the answer to those questions, please comment down below. I would like to know. But for just driving around, I guess these are fine. But and that's why in the Galaxy we get the Q code 428, but we never got like a Cobra Jet version of it with the high lift camshaft and everything, because they just couldn't fit good exhaust manifolds in the Galaxy to make that work. So even though we'd get a 428-inch engine in the Galaxy with 10.5 to 1 compression, it had the 392 barrel camshaft in it, just to try and make it live with these exhaust manifolds. The 390 Z-Code high performance engine in the Galaxy, same thing, 2-barreled broomstick for a cam. What are you going to do? So as far as camshafts go, there are some markings on them somewhere. A lot of times it's just a paint daub, which, well, you won't be finding on this one, right? There were very few high-performance camshafts in these. The up till 64, I guess, in the 406 and the real HP 390 engines, you might get a good camshaft. I mean, there were some that were solid lifter, right? But once you pass 65, in Galaxies anyway, there's nothing. The first good camshaft after 65 came in the Fairlane and Mustang, the S-Code 390s and the Cobra Jet 428s because they could fit good exhaust manifolds in those cars. It's funny because it's a smaller car, but they managed to fit better exhaust manifolds in them so they could use a high lift camshaft. And continuing on with the valve gear or the valve train, we've got the actual valve gear. FE engines were hydraulic camshafts, save for a few high performance versions that had mechanical cams, but you won't be finding any of that stuff in here, or most junkyards for that matter. But this stuff, it's all common to all FE engines. Even the heavy duty truck engines use the same stuff. On to intake manifolds. There was lots of different ones used over the years. Probably 90% of them were 2 barrels like this one. This is a D5, so this is one of the last ones. It's an EGR intake starting in 1975. I wonder if it's got the small ports to go with those small port heads. Let's see. Yeah, you can see there it's a small port EGR intake manifold. You will find 4-barrel intakes for these things all over the place. T-Bird intakes, S-Code Mustang intakes. If you find one, don't pay over $100 for it. There's just too many of them around. And you'll find some that are 4-barrel intakes off pickup trucks. Just know your casting numbers or have a phone with you so you can look it up. You don't want to pay a whole bunch of money for a small port intake and not find out it's a small port intake till you get home, right? And it's not going to line up with your big port heads. If you got small port heads, find a small port intake. They'll match up and it'll work better, right? But, I mean, those ones, pickup truck ones, don't pay hardly anything for them. But the S-Code Mustang ones, some guys you'll see there because they're trying to sell it based on the date code or the S that's stamped in it. But, I mean, 390 high performance like Z-Code Galaxies use the S-Code Mustang intake manifold. It's not that exotic of a part. There are some T-Bird intakes that don't have the S in them. They're kind of like a T-Bird intake. And then you can find the earlier ones, earlier 4-barrel intakes that have the hole in the front for the breather and the hole in the back right there for the draft tube. Those can be plugged and you can use that intake on a later engine, right? If you've got one of those draft tube engines, then that's the intake that you need. Although I guess if you wanted to, if you weren't that worried about aesthetics, you could change the valve covers and run a PCV on it. Also, over the years, there was all kinds of performance induction systems for these things. There was dual 4 barrels. There was the tri-power. There was the very expensive to find now aluminum police interceptor intake manifold. I think that was on the earlier ones, 63, 64, kind of around there. Those command a price, and even an aftermarket aluminum one, they get a little bit pricey too. But as far as an intake manifold goes, there's lots of choice, and pretty much any 4-barrel intake that you find, like an iron one, it'll work in a pinch, right? Some are better than others. Do your reading on the forums, depending on what you want to do with it. Intake manifolds, there's so many of them, and everybody's got their own opinion. They say, use this one, don't use anything else. And the next guy will say, that one's crap, use this one. It's all due to personal experience and what you've learned and what works for you, right? So that should do it for intake manifolds. The only other thing kind of related to the intake manifold, I was telling you about this earlier. If you're working on a 64 or older car, or a T-Bird also, they use this expansion tank. See, there's the thermostat outlet on the intake manifold, and this bolts onto there like that, and then the upper rad hose goes to the rad, because they had kind of a plunging hood line, those cars, and I guess they figured they didn't have room for a radiator cap. So they put this surge tank on the engine block or the intake manifold, and had a nice low-rise cross-flow rad in them, right? So keep that in mind. You might need one of those, depending on what you're doing. Too bad this one's wrecked. Something's hit it and twisted it, and popped those solder joints there. It might pressure test okay. If you could pressure test it and it was okay, you could probably twist it back and solder that back on, but it's probably seen better days. Now I guess we could talk about oiling these things. So there's the HD setup. It sits in there like that. It's got a big, huge oil pan. This is another style of pickup with a removable screen, interchangeable. The HD oil pump, it's a little more, I think it's a little more heavy than the car oil pump. And it uses a larger diameter hex on the drive shaft. So you cannot drive this with a car distributor. I think there was a company that was making oil pump drives that had the truck end on one end and the car end on the other. Otherwise, you have to use the big truck distributor to drive this thing if you want to stick with this style oil pump and not have to put the bushing in the block like we talked about earlier. I don't know what you'll get in way of a curve or anything in the big truck distributor. It's probably not going to be optimum for a light, more RPM happy street vehicle, right? So this here is a car oil pump and a car pickup or pickup truck, right? So it sits down in there like that. And these are some different oil pans here. Oh, I also need to mention that, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. So this has the smaller size hex drive, so you can drive it with your car distributor. So to use this setup in that HD block that we found, you just have to put that little bushing in where the bottom of the distributor rides. No problem at all. Now, as far as oil pans go, there's that monster down there for the HD, and then there's these two. And you can see what we've got here is 2 pickup truck pans, these ones, and 2 car oil pans. And mostly what the difference is right here. You see those little dents there? Right there. That is clearance for the front cross member in the car. The pickup truck pan doesn't have that, and this will sit on the cross member if you try to put this oil pan in a car. I kind of think that maybe they're a little more deep, like a little more squared off, and they may hold an extra quart of oil. I'm not 100% sure on that. Or they may have just put a shorter dipstick in the truck engine to make it hold an extra quart of oil that way. I'm not 100% sure. I've never checked them by volume. But that's the difference in your oil pans. You can see here. That's completely squared off there. And this has got the relief for the cross member. You'll also see that the car pans have a nice baffle in them that I don't think the truck pans have. Yeah, see, the truck pans don't have the acceleration baffle like the car pans do. That's another difference. If I had a truck, I think I'd be putting the baffle from a car pan in it. Now I've got oil filter adapters. This one here is for a truck, and it sits on the engine like that with a horizontal oil filter. These ones are for cars, and they sit on, and you can see the oil filter is vertical. Completely interchangeable. All you need is a gasket to swap from one to the other. Also, while we're in the front of the engine, if you're building one of those HD blocks, you'll need a car timing set, because remember, the snout on the HD crank is bigger, and it won't fit. It won't work with the car crankshaft. If you're building one of those HD blocks, like I said before, literally all you can use from it, and keep this in mind, is the block itself and the connecting rods. And maybe if it has a nice 4-barrel intake on it, you could use that. I don't know if there were 4-barrel HDs. Correct me if I'm wrong. All the ones I've ever seen have got 2 barrels on them. But that doesn't mean you couldn't get it with a 4-barrel. Fuel pumps, we have 2 styles, interchangeable, but you have to bear in mind one thing. This is the early one with the integral fuel filter. It's a cartridge, a spin-on type fuel filter. And this is the later one, where the fuel filter is screwed into the carburetor. So if you're using this one, I'm talking about if you're going with all like factory parts, right? If you're using this one, this has got a hard line that goes from the outlet of this pump up to the carburetor, and the carburetor will have the inlet thread will be an inverted flare, right? Whereas if you're using this one, the inlet of the carburetor will be 1/8 pipe. so you can screw the fuel filter into it. So just keep that in mind if you're mixing and matching stuff, and you want it to like have a factory look to it. Otherwise, you just do what you got to do to make it work, right? So we talked earlier about balance. The 410 and the 428, they're externally balanced. You can see the little bob weight on this flex plate here. That's a 410 flex plate. This will also work on a 428. The 390, 352, 360, all the rest of them, it's the same flex plate, but they won't have the bob weight on it. Same with the cast iron flywheel if you're running a 4-speed. As far as the rest of them, I think 427s are internally balanced also, but the 410 and the 428, any flavor of 428, they are all externally balanced. So you need to bear that in mind when you're mixing and matching parts. And speaking of balance, this is the late 68 and up style of thick balancer. Whether you have the thick balancer or the thin balancer, they both go on with this spacer. And as I mentioned before, the balancers are interchangeable. Even the externally balanced engines, the 410 and the 428, they still use the neutral balance balancer on the front. The little bob weight is only on the back, with the exception of the 428 Super Cobra Jet that includes an axe weight, they call it. So this thing here has got a flying weight sticking out of one side because the 428 Super Cobra Jet needs balancing at both ends. These things all use basically the same aluminum timing cover and water pump arrangement over the years. I'm sure there's little differences here and there, but to my knowledge, I've never run into anything that's not interchangeable. Like this is a D4TE, so that's like first used in 1974 water pump, but I'm pretty sure I could put this on a 1966 car and it wouldn't have any problem at all. Same with these timing covers. There may be a few different variations of the actual pointer over the years, but nothing that you can't overcome. And these are more parts that you'll need if you're building an often HD block, right? Because all the stuff on the HD will not be car friendly. And last we come to the ignition, which is where I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to do something for me at the end of this. That's kind of a joke. But anyway, these are 3-point distributors that I just picked up out of the trunks of cars. Guaranteed they're from different years, different displacements. They've all got different curves in them. But, I mean, they are what they are. You can work with them. We used to buy those Mr. Gasket curve kits and fiddle around them and try different springs and stuff. This one actually turns nice. That'd be a good one. It really turns nice and free. That'd be a good one maybe if you wanted to put a Pertronic swap in it or something. So if you're happy to go with the points, something like this will work just fine, and the supply of them is limitless. I don't know if maybe in some of the high performance ones they were dual point distributors. I need to look into that. If we go over here to this one, where the wasps are, hopefully they've settled down now. This is a little later one, and it's got Duraspark, but it's a Smogger one. You can see it's a 2-line Duraspark. But I do have one or two of them at home that I've grabbed here and there that just have the old traditional 1-line Duraspark distributor in them. Let's see what this one in here has. Yeah, see, this has just got a 1-line. That would probably be a pretty good distributor to swap into an older one. And oh, no, you know what? That's points. I can tell by the coil. That's why that's only got one line. So this one is a little bit older. And you can see here, it's got plugs in the thermactor ports. So whether somebody did that or that's a factory deal, I don't know. The only thing I told you I wanted to ask a favor of you. Please, no matter how tempting it is, do not go on Amazon and buy one of those HEI drop-in distributors, because there's I don't know. There's nothing to me more wrong than whipping open the hood of a beautiful Ford and having a freaking ugly GM distributor staring back at you. It wouldn't be so bad if they were at the back, but they're sitting right there in the front, and they've all got those gaudy bright red caps on them. Please don't do that. please, if if you put Duraspark in it, and if you don't like the Duraspark box, it'll run just fine on a GM HEI module, or even a Chrysler orange box hooked into this distributor that you can hide somewhere. But personally, I've never had a problem with Duraspark. Just keep an extra box in the trunk and you're fine. And hey, while we're in here looking at this engine, as far as accessories go, this is the right alternator bracket. It pretty much fits all of them. So this is a good thing to have. And power steering stuff too. This one doesn't seem to have it. A lot of times when engines come out, the power steering pump gets removed and flipped over to the side and stays with the car, unfortunately. Not too often in the junkyard you'll find engines with the steering pump still on them. And then once you've got everything all sorted out, and the last thing you need is an air cleaner, the junkyard is your friend again, because the one great thing about Fords is the 2-barrel and the 4-barrel all use the same air cleaner. So you can, even if you change from a 2-barrel to a 4-barrel, you can put your old original air cleaner back on. You can go to the junkyard and find another one the same as yours and steal the snorkel off it and make yourself a nice double snorkel air cleaner. I always do that. Every Ford I've ever had, I make one of those for it. Okay, well, now that we're done up here, what do you say we go back down to the bottom and use our newfound knowledge to try and identify a few things that are down there. So let's see what we've got here. This is a later one. You can see it's got 4-bolt motor mounts. It's got the external ribs on the side of it. Let's measure the bore first. So we get 4 inches and it looks like 70 thousandths. So this is a 20 over. It's a 390 block that's gone 20 over. I got to flip it around and we're going to look at the innards of it and see what the inside of it looks like. So the date code on this guy is 1D30. So that's 1971, April the 30th. That's when this 390 block was cast. Like I said, it appears to be 20 over already. Although I don't find a rebuilder tag on the block anywhere. It's difficult to measure them in here. I'm going to take one more stab at measuring it just to make sure that I'm getting an accurate measurement, because crud gets built up in them bores and you're measuring on top of the crud. So even though I measured it at 20, it could be 30. Let me have another stab at it. So on this side, that bore was a little bit cleaner. And yeah, it looks like it's actually 30 over. But it's a 30 over 390 block. If the bores are good, if you could clean them up, I mean, they don't look too bad. They're not all pitted or nothing. You may be able to put this thing back into service with a set of 30 over pistons, right? Okay, now we're going to see if we can figure out what this guy is. And here, I finally found this is an early 2-bolt block. See, it's missing a... I was wrong before. I said they added these two. It's not. They added these two. But anyway, this is an early 2-bolt mount block. So this is 1964 or earlier. So we're going to see if we can figure out what this thing is. First, let's have a look at the crankshaft. And we can see it does have the football notch. But are we going to take that for granted? Or are we going to pull a plug out and see if we can see what the stroke is in this thing? If it turns. Let's see if it turns. Yeah, she turns. And listen, hear the compression? That's pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll pull a plug out of this thing and see what we can find out. So we used our unscientific method here to check the stroke of this engine, and we came up with 3.5 inches, which is a 352. Although it may have been a 352 4-barrel because it doesn't seem to have an intake manifold on it anymore. And, you know, people don't generally come to the junkyard to get 2-barrel intake manifolds, you know. So I kind of think this may have been a 4-barrel engine, but we'll never know, I guess. Here's another one here that we found. It's a 60s, I'm guessing like a medium-duty truck engine. You can see it's got some goofy pulleys and brackets and stuff on it. It's got the old school screw-on fuel filter, but it does have power steering. But anyway, I reached down behind it and I could feel the football notch in the back of the crankshaft. So I'd be pretty sure this one's a 352 or a 360. And I can't turn it because it's seized. So I guess we'll never know what this one is. Oh, look at that. Nova wheels. That's a Unilug Krager Pontiac rally wheel. Man, there's all kinds of treasures in this place. Well, that's probably gone on a little bit long, but we had a lot to cover. And we just like skimmed the surface of the knowledge of these FE Ford engines. There's a lot to know, man. And I don't pretend to know a fraction of it. If I've made any mistakes in this, please, in the comment below, correct me. And I'll try to edit the video or cut out the bad information or do something. I don't want to be putting bad information out there, right? I've tried to keep it accurate. Anyway, hopefully now you know a little bit about these things. If you're looking at cars or looking to repower a car or just looking at junk in a junkyard, to have kind of a clue of what you're looking at, right? Because these things, there's a lot to know, man. They're really confusing. Also like to send a special thanks to Travis and everybody at Nurse Scrap Metal for letting me get in here and make these videos. I'm trying to document as much of this place as possible and learn as much as possible and pass it on to you guys, because once it's gone, it's gone. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for tuning into our channel. I hope you'll come back and see us again. And until then, I'm Kevin saying so long for now.